I have set down many of Poirot's cases in my time, and in most of them I can point to a precise moment when the mystery began. A letter, a telegram, a stranger's whisper at a party. But the affair of the Orient Express Phantom was different. It crept up on us. It gathered in the corners of that famous train like fog rolling off the Bosphorus, and by the time we understood what was happening, a man was dead and the fog had teeth. We were not supposed to be on that train at all. Poirot had been in Istanbul for a week, consulting on a matter for the Turkish government that he declined to discuss, and that I, frankly, did not press him about. I had come along because the alternative was a November in London, and because Poirot, for all his protests about foreign cuisine and unreliable plumbing, was considerably more entertaining company than my club. Istanbul had been magnificent. The domes of the mosques against an iron sky. The Grand Bazaar, where Poirot spent an enchanted hour examining symmetrical arrangements of spices, while I trailed behind, sneezing. The Bosphorus at sunset, that extraordinary collision of continents, of Europe sliding into Asia, with nothing between them but a ribbon of water the color of hammered bronze. But now it was over, and we stood on the platform of Sirkechi Station at 11 o'clock at night, waiting for the Simplon Orient Express to carry us home. The platform was chaos. November meant the off-season, and yet the train appeared oversubscribed. Porters shouted, luggage trolleys collided, and passengers of a dozen nationalities jostled for position beneath the wrought iron canopy. The locomotive sat at the head of the platform like a beast in harness, its boiler hissing, steam curling upward into the cold air and dissolving against the station lights. Poirot stood beside me, immaculate in his traveling coat, his patent leather shoes gleaming despite the damp platform, his expression that of a man enduring disorder with the forbearance of a saint who has seen worse but does not enjoy being reminded of it. "Hastings," he said, "I do not care for this." "The crowd, it'll thin out once we're aboard." "Not the crowd, the atmosphere." He lifted his chin, as though testing the air. "Something is wrong." I looked around. Nothing seemed particularly wrong. A family, French by the sound of them, argued about luggage. A tall man in a fur-collared overcoat strode past us without apology, his face set in the hard lines of someone accustomed to moving through the world without adjusting for others. A woman in a blue traveling suit stood apart from the crowd, very still, watching the train with an intensity that struck me even then as unusual. "You're imagining things," I said. Poirot gave me the look he reserved for moments when I had said something so profoundly wrong that it circled back around into being almost interesting. "Hercule Poirot does not imagine, Hastings. He observes. And he observes that there are too many anxious faces on this platform for a routine journey." Our compartments were in the wagon lit. Poirot in number 6, I in number 7. The sleeping car conductor, a Greek named Stavros with a walrus mustache and melancholy eyes, showed us to our berths with weary efficiency. "A full train tonight, messieurs. Every compartment taken. Very unusual for November." "You have interesting passengers?" Poirot inquired, as though the question were merely conversational. Stavros shrugged. "Interesting, I cannot say. But there is a Russian countess who brought 4 trunks and a small dog, an English colonel who demanded to know if the heating works, and a German professor who has already complained twice about the orientation of his berth." He lowered his voice. "Also, there is a man in compartment number 1 who booked under the name Smith. His luggage says otherwise." "Otherwise?" "The initials on his cases are CDV. I noticed when the porter carried them aboard." "Smith." Stavros smiled without humor. "As names go, it lacks conviction." Poirot thanked him, and we retired to our compartments to settle in. The train would depart at midnight, arrive in Belgrade the following evening, and reach Paris 2 days later. I changed into my pajamas, arranged my things, and was about to turn in when a knock came at my door. It was Poirot, still fully dressed, his eyes bright with that particular alertness that meant the little gray cells had engaged. "Come with me to the dining car, Hastings. I wish to take a tisane before bed, and I wish to take the measure of our fellow passengers." "It's nearly midnight, Poirot." "Precisely. People reveal themselves at midnight. The masks slip, the pretenses falter. Midnight is the detective's golden hour." The dining car was more crowded than I had expected. Perhaps a dozen passengers sat at the white-clothed tables, some eating late suppers, others nursing drinks, all wearing the slightly heightened expressions of people embarking on a long journey. Excitement, anxiety, the strange intimacy of strangers thrown together in a moving box. Poirot ordered his tisane. I ordered a whiskey and soda. And together, we surveyed the field. The tall man in the fur collar sat alone at the far end, eating with mechanical precision. Up close, he was perhaps 50, with a lean, hawkish face, iron-gray hair brushed straight back, and hands that moved with the controlled economy of a man who does nothing accidentally. There was something military about him, though not English military. Something harder, more continental. At the next table, a couple sat in what I can only describe as elaborate silence. The man was young, early 30s, with the soft, handsome features and expensive clothes of someone who had never worked for anything in his life. His companion was older by a decade, dark-haired, striking with the kind of beauty that carried an undertow of sadness. They did not speak. They did not look at each other. And yet the tension between them was like a wire stretched to breaking. Beyond them, the woman in the blue traveling suit whom I had noticed on the platform. She sat alone, stirring a coffee she did not drink, her gaze fixed on the middle distance with the unseeing focus of someone lost in thought. She was perhaps 40, well-dressed but not ostentatious, with the composed bearing of a woman accustomed to managing herself. A small leather journal lay open beside her cup, but I could not see what was written in it. And at the table nearest the kitchen, an elderly man in clerical dress, a priest or a minister, ate bread and cheese with the contentment of one who finds simple pleasures sufficient. His face was round and pink, his eyes mild behind small round spectacles. He nodded to us pleasantly as we sat down. "Bonsoir, Monsieur Poirot. I'd heard you were in Istanbul." Poirot's eyebrows rose. "You know me, monsieur." "Everyone knows the great Hercule Poirot. I am Father Bernard Marchand, of the Dominican Order. I have been in Constantinople these past 3 months, studying manuscripts at the Topkapi. We returned to Europe on the same train. A happy coincidence." "There are no coincidences," Poirot murmured, though he said it with a smile. Father Marchand laughed, a warm, genuine sound. "A detective's philosophy. A theologian would say there are nothing but coincidences, and that God arranges every one of them." I liked him immediately. Poirot, I could tell, was reserving judgment, as he always did, even with priests. We had been in the dining car perhaps 20 minutes when the incident occurred. The train had pulled out of Sirkeci and was threading its way through the outskirts of Istanbul, the city lights smearing past the darkened windows. The motion was smooth, the rhythm hypnotic. I was on my second whiskey and beginning to feel the pleasant drowsiness of a man who has earned his rest. Then the lights went out. Not a flicker, not a dimming, a complete, instantaneous blackout. The dining car plunged into darkness. Someone gasped. A glass shattered. The train continued to move, its wheels beating their steady rhythm. But inside the carriage, time seemed to stop. It lasted perhaps 10 seconds. Then the lights returned, sputtering, settling, restoring the world to its proper illumination. And in those 10 seconds, something had changed. The tall man in the fur collar, the one who had been eating alone at the far table, was standing. Not sitting, standing. His chair was pushed back, his napkin was on the floor, and his face, that hard, composed face, wore an expression I had never seen on a living man. Terror. Absolute, undisguised terror. He was staring at the window. Not through it, at the glass itself. And when I followed his gaze, I understood why. Written on the inside of the window, in what appeared to be condensation traced by a finger, were 4 words. I have found you. The letters were already fading, the moisture evaporating in the heated air of the dining car. Within moments, they would be gone entirely. But I had seen them. Poirot had seen them, and from the expression on the tall man's face, he had seen them too. He sat down abruptly, as though his legs had given way. His hand shook as he reached for his wine glass. He drank deeply, set the glass down, and looked around the carriage with the rapid, darting gaze of a hunted animal. His eyes met Poirot's. Something passed between them. Not recognition exactly, but understanding. The understanding of a man who knows he's in danger looking at a man who knows what danger looks like. Then the tall man rose, threw a handful of coins on the table, and left the dining car without a word. The silence he left behind was brief. Conversation resumed. The couple who did not speak to each other continued not speaking. Father Marchand returned to his bread and cheese. The woman in blue closed her journal and signaled the waiter for the bill. But Poirot sat very still, his tisane untouched, his eyes fixed on the window where the words had already vanished completely. "Hastings," he said quietly. "Did you see? The writing on the window?" "Yes. Some sort of prank, surely. A bored passenger?" "A prank. Yes, that is one explanation." He turned to me. "And the man's reaction? Was that also a prank?" I had no answer. "That man," Poirot said, "is frightened. Not mildly, not abstractly. He is frightened the way a man is frightened who knows death is coming and has been expecting it. You don't think—" "I think nothing yet. But I observe, and I tell you this. Before this train reaches Belgrade, something will happen. The writing on the window, it was not a prank, Hastings. It was a promise. Morning on the Orient Express is a particular kind of theater. The narrow corridors fill with the shuffle of passengers making their way to breakfast. The dining car smells of coffee and toast and the faint, clean tang of starched linen. Outside, the landscape has changed. The minarets and rooftops of Istanbul are gone, replaced by the rolling farmland of Thrace, flat and grey beneath a November sky. I slept badly. The memory of that message on the window had worked on my imagination in ways I didn't care to admit. I have found you. The words carried the weight of a vendetta, of something personal and implacable. Poirot, by contrast, appeared at breakfast looking as though he had slept on clouds and been awakened by angels. His moustache was waxed to mirror perfection. His suit was pressed. His egg, boiled naturally for precisely 4 minutes, met with his grudging approval. "You did not sleep, Hastings. How can you tell? You have the eyes of a man who has been arguing with his pillow. Also, you have buttoned your waistcoat incorrectly." I glanced down. He was right. The dining car was nearly full. I scanned the tables, cataloguing faces from the night before. The couple who didn't speak were present. This morning they were speaking, quietly, intensely, their heads close together. Whatever they were discussing, it was not pleasant. The man's jaw was tight. The woman's eyes were red. Father Marchand sat near the window, reading a breviary, a cup of tea steaming beside him. He raised a hand in cheerful greeting. The woman in blue was absent, and the tall man, the man of the fur collar, the man who had been terrified, occupied a table in the corner, eating nothing, drinking black coffee, his eyes never still. In daylight, I could study him more carefully. His face was deeply lined, the skin stretched taut over prominent bones. There was a scar, very faint, running from his left temple to his jawline. Old, well-healed, the kind of scar that speaks of violence from decades past. His hands, wrapped around the coffee cup, were steady now, but I noticed that his right hand bore a signet ring engraved with an elaborate crest I did not recognize. "Do we know who he is?" I asked Poirot. "I have made inquiries. The conductor tells me he is booked as Mr. James Smith of London, but as we have already observed, the initials on his luggage are CDV. Also, the conductor notes that he booked his ticket at the last moment, yesterday afternoon, paying in cash and declining to show identification. A man running from something, or running towards something. The two are not always distinguishable." Poirot sipped his chocolate. "I've also learned the identities of several other passengers. The young couple are Mr. and Mrs. Stefan Novak, Czech, recently married, traveling to Paris. He's the son of a Prague industrialist. She was, until last year, a governess. A governess who married the boss's son. It is a story as old as stories, Hastings. Whether this particular version has a happy ending remains to be observed." "And the woman in blue?" "Mrs. Irene Harwood, English, a widow. She boards the train in Istanbul and disembarks in Trieste. Beyond that, the conductor knows nothing." Poirot paused. "But I noticed something about Mrs. Harwood that the conductor did not." "What?" "Last night, when the lights went out, everyone in the dining car reacted. Some gasped, some froze. The young Mrs. Novak reached for her husband's hand. Father Marchand crossed himself. Natural reactions, all of them, but Mrs. Harwood did none of these things. What did she do? She watched. Her eyes went not to the darkness, not to the window, not to the source of the disturbance. They went directly to the man in the fur collar, as though she had been waiting for precisely this moment, as though she knew. A chill ran through me that had nothing to do with the November draft. After breakfast, I took a stroll through the train, partly for exercise, partly because Poirot had asked me to keep my eyes and ears open. The Orient Express, even in the off-season, remained a marvel of traveling luxury. The wagon-lit carriages were paneled in lacquered wood, their brass fittings polished to a warm glow. The corridors were carpeted in deep blue. Through the windows, the Thracian plains unrolled endlessly, broken by the occasional village, its rooftops clustered like a handful of dice thrown carelessly onto the landscape. I was passing through the connecting corridor between the sleeping cars when I encountered the young Mrs. Novak. She was standing at the window, her arms wrapped around herself, staring out at the passing countryside, with an expression of such desolation that I stopped. "Are you quite well, Mrs. Novak?" She turned. Up close, she was striking rather than beautiful. Strong cheekbones, deep-set eyes, a mouth that had perhaps once smiled easily, but had forgotten the habit. "Forgive me. I was merely thinking. The view is rather monotonous, I'm afraid." She smiled faintly. "I grew up on a farm, not unlike this landscape. Flat, endless. I thought marrying Stefan would take me away from it. Instead, I find that one carries one's landscape with one." It was the kind of remark that sounded like a confidence but was really a wall, an offering of intimacy designed to prevent deeper inquiry. I recognized it because Poirot had taught me to recognize it. "Your husband is well." Something flickered in her eyes. "My husband is always well. It is his particular talent." She excused herself and retreated down the corridor. I stood for a moment, considering. Then I continued my walk and nearly collided with the man I'd not expected to see. The tall man, Smith, CDV, whatever his name was, stood in the corridor outside compartment number 1, his hand on the door handle, frozen in the act of either entering or leaving. He stared at me with the unfocused intensity of someone whose mind was elsewhere. "I beg your pardon," I said. He seemed to come back to himself. "Not at all." His English was precise but accented. Germanic, I thought, or possibly Austrian. "You are the companion of Monsieur Poirot?" "Captain Hastings." "Yes." "I should like to speak with him." His voice was low, urgent. This afternoon, in private. Will you arrange it? Certainly. May I tell him what it concerns? The man's jaw worked. He looked past me, down the corridor, as though checking that we were alone. Then he said, very quietly, "Tell him it concerns a ghost that has followed me across 2 continents and 10 years. Tell him that ghost was in the dining car last night and it wrote its intentions on the window." He entered his compartment and shut the door. The lock engaged with a sharp click. I found Poirot in his compartment, arranging his toiletries with the concentrated attention of a chess player studying a board. "He wants to see you," I said. "The man in number 1. He's frightened, Poirot. He called it a ghost." "A phantom, Hastings, on the Orient Express. How fitting." Poirot adjusted a bottle of hair oil by precisely 1 millimeter. "Tell me his exact words." I did. Poirot listened without interruption, his fingertips pressed together. "A ghost that has followed him across 2 continents and 10 years. This is not a figure of speech. This is a man who believes that someone he wronged, or someone connected to a person he wronged, has tracked him across the world and is now on this train, preparing to exact a reckoning." But the message on the window. How was it done? The lights were out for 10 seconds. 10 seconds is a lifetime, mon ami, to someone who has planned carefully. The message was written in advance on the glass, with a finger dipped in glycerin. A substance that remains invisible until the temperature differential between the heated interior and the cold exterior causes condensation to form around the letters. A simple trick. A theatrical trick, but effective. "You mean someone set this up before the train departed?" "Before or shortly after. The dining car windows were accessible during boarding. Any passenger could have traced those words while the carriage was empty. But who and why? That is what we shall discover this afternoon. The man in compartment number 1 has a story to tell. I suspect it will be a dark one. His name was Count Dmitri Andreevich Varanov. He told us this with the resignation of a man removing a disguise he has worn so long it has become a second skin. We sat in his compartment. Poirot in the single chair, I on the edge of the berth. Varanov standing by the window with his back to the passing landscape, as though he could not bear to see the world moving on while his own world had stopped. "I was born in St. Petersburg in 1876, he began. "My family was old, Romanov connections, estates in the Crimea, the usual trappings of Russian nobility. I grew up in a world of privilege so complete that it never occurred to me it could end." He paused, touching the faint scar on his temple. "The revolution ended it. In 1917, everything was swept away. My father was shot. My mother died of typhus in the chaos that followed. I escaped, barely, through Finland, then Sweden, then Germany. By 1919, I was in Vienna, penniless, stateless, carrying nothing but the name Varanov and the certainty that the world owed me something for what it had taken." "Many Russian émigrés shared your predicament," Poirot observed. "Many did. And most, like me, were forced into compromises they would not have considered in their former lives." Varanov's voice hardened. "I became, how shall I say, a man of arrangements. I connected people who had things with people who wanted them. Art, jewelry, documents, information. I operated in the gray areas between legality and crime, and I was very good at it. You were a smuggler. I prefer intermediary, but yes. And in 1924, I became involved in an affair that has haunted me ever since." He sat down on the berth opposite me, his long frame folding like a carpenter's rule. "There was a man in Vienna, a businessman named Heinrich Lessner, Swiss-German, wealthy, respected. He collected art, particularly Russian icons, and he came to me because I had connections to the émigrés who were selling their family treasures to survive. I arranged several transactions for him, all perfectly legitimate. But Lessner wanted something specific, a particular icon, the Madonna of Kazan, a 15th century masterpiece that had been in my family's collection for generations. It had been smuggled out of Russia by a servant and was being held by a former associate of mine in Budapest. Lesner offered an extraordinary sum. I agreed to broker the deal. And the transaction went wrong, Poirot said. Varanov's face twisted. The transaction went perfectly. The icon was authentic. The money changed hands. Lesner was delighted. But what I did not know, what I could not have known, was that the icon was not merely an artwork. Hidden inside the frame was a compartment containing documents. Letters, to be precise. Letters that implicated Lesner in a wartime scandal. The financing of arms shipments to both sides during the Great War. Letters he had spent years trying to destroy. And he blamed you for the discovery. Not immediately. The letters were found by Lesner's wife, Marguerite, while having the icon reframed as a gift for his birthday. She read them. She confronted him, and in the argument that followed, Varanov stopped. His hands, which had been steady throughout, began to tremble. Marguerite Lesner fell from the balcony of their apartment. 4 stories. She died instantly. The compartment was very quiet. The train's rhythm filled the silence. The steady clatter of wheels on rails, the creak of wood, the low moan of wind against the windows. An accident, Varanov continued. That was the official verdict. Lesner had money, influence, connections. The investigation was cursory, but their daughter, their only child, was 17 years old. She was in the apartment that night. She heard the argument. She knew. What was the daughter's name? Poirot asked softly. Elise Lesner. He looked at Poirot with eyes that had aged decades in the telling. She swore to her mother on the balcony, as Marguerite lay dying, that she would find everyone responsible, not just her father. Icon. I was the man who brokered the sale, Icon. I was the man who brokered the sale. Without me, Marguerite would never have found those letters. Without me, she would still be alive. That is a considerable burden of guilt for a man who merely sold an artwork. Guilt does not operate by logic, Monsieur Poirot. It operates by proximity. I was close enough to the chain of cause and effect that Elise Lesner held me responsible. And she has spent the last 10 years making me know it. How? Letters at first. Sent to every address I used, no matter how carefully I concealed my movements. Always the same message. I know where you are. Then gifts. Small, symbolic. A miniature of the Madonna of Kazan left on my doorstep in Rome. A photograph of Marguerite Lesner slipped under my hotel room door in Cairo. And finally in Buenos Aires last year. Something worse. What? My business partner was found dead, poisoned. The police ruled it natural causes. A weak heart, they said. But I found a note in his office in handwriting I recognized. It said, 1 down. The temperature in the compartment seemed to drop. I ran. I've been running ever since. I changed my name, changed my appearance, changed my route every week. I thought, foolishly, that I had lost her. Then I boarded this train, and last night in the dining car, the message appeared on the window. I have found you, Poirot said. She is on this train, Monsieur Poirot. Elise Lesner is here, and she means to kill me before we reach Paris. Poirot was quiet for a very long time. The train had entered a stretch of forest, the trees pressing close to the tracks, their branches skeletal against the grey sky. Light and shadow alternated across Poirot's face like the bars of a cell. Describe Elise Lesner, he said at last. I have not seen her since 1924. She was 17 then, slender, fair-haired, with her mother's coloring. She would be 27 now, but I do not know what she looks like. That is the horror of it. She could be anyone. Any woman on this train. I thought immediately of Mrs. Irene Harwood, the woman in blue who had watched Varanov so intently, and of Mrs. Novak, the former governess with her desolate eyes and bitter remarks about landscape. Poirot, I knew, was thinking the same thing. But he said only, "I will investigate. In the meantime, Count Varanov, you will remain in your compartment. You will lock your door. You will accept food and drink from no one, not the conductor, not the waiter, not your own hand, unless you have seen the dish prepared. Do you understand?" Varanov nodded. "You believe she will try poison. Your partner in Buenos Aires was poisoned. The method is established, and on a train where a victim cannot easily reach a doctor, poison is the weapon of choice for someone patient and precise." We left Varanov in his compartment. In the corridor, Poirot paused. "Well, Hastings, what do you make of it?" "A terrifying story. The man is clearly in genuine fear." "The fear is genuine, yes. But is the story? That is the question." "You doubt him?" "I doubt everyone, mon ami. It is the only safe position. Count Varanov has told us a story in which he is the victim, a man haunted by an avenging daughter. But stories have more than one side. What if the chain of events he described was not accidental? What if he knew about the letters in the icon? What if the sale to Lesnar was deliberate, a calculated act designed to expose those letters and destroy Lesnar's reputation? But why? Leverage, blackmail, revenge. The motives of men in the grey areas between legality and crime are seldom simple. And Marguerite's death? A consequence, perhaps. Unintended, perhaps. But a consequence for which Varanov bears more responsibility than he admits. The daughter, Elise. Her vendetta may be not the irrational pursuit of an obsessed young woman, but the perfectly rational response of someone who knows the full truth. I felt unsteady. Not from the motion of the train, but from the shifting ground of the narrative. Every time I thought I had the shape of the case, Poirot tilted it and showed me a different angle. So, what do? We find Elise Lesnar. We determine who on this train she is, and we do it before she completes what she has crossed 2 continents to accomplish. That afternoon, while the Orient Express crawled through the Bulgarian countryside, a landscape of bare fields and distant mountain ridges dusted with early snow, Poirot conducted what he called his preliminary observations. I called them interrogations, but he disliked the word. One does not interrogate on a train, Hastings. One converses. One takes tea. One allows the other person to believe they are being charming rather than investigated. He began with Mrs. Irene Harwood. We found her in the salon car, reading a French novel with the focused attention of someone using literature as a barricade. She looked up as we approached, and for a moment her expression was unguarded, wary, assessing, the look of someone calculating whether to engage or retreat. "Madame Harwood, I'm Hercule Poirot. Might I join you?" The detective. Her voice was low, measured. English, as Stavros had said, but with something else beneath it. A faint continental inflection, barely detectable but present, like a watermark in paper. "Everyone on the train seems to know who you are." "It is a mixed blessing, madame. Fame brings attention. Attention brings expectations, and expectations, they are so often disappointed." She almost smiled. "Sit down, Monsieur Poirot." Over tea, a portrait emerged, though whether it was a true portrait or careful composition, I could not tell. Irene Harwood was 41. Her husband, Colonel Gerald Harwood, had died 3 years ago in Malaya. A fever, she said, contracted during a posting that should never have been approved given his health. She had spent the years since traveling, Europe, North Africa, the Levant, the restless movement of someone who has lost their anchor. "And what brings you to the Orient Express in November?" Poirot asked pleasantly. "I was visiting a friend in Istanbul, an old school friend who married a Turkish diplomat. I'm returning to Trieste, where I have a small apartment. Nothing dramatic, I'm afraid." "And last night in the dining car, when the lights went out, you were not disturbed?" Her cup paused halfway to her lips. Everyone was disturbed. "And yet you did not cry out, or reach for a companion, or show any visible alarm. You watched. The pause was fractional, so brief that most people would not have registered it. But I had been watching for it, and I saw it. A tiny recalibration behind her eyes. I am not the screaming type, Monsieur Poirot. And yes, I watched. When strange things happen, I find it more useful to observe than to panic. A commendable philosophy. And what did you observe? I observed that the man at the far table was terrified. Not surprised, terrified. There is a difference. There is indeed. You noticed this even in darkness. The lights were out for only a few seconds, and when they returned, his face told the story. Poirot nodded. You are a perceptive woman, Madame Harwood. I have had to be. It was a line delivered with just enough weight to suggest depths without revealing them. I found myself thinking of Poirot's observation about walls disguised as confidences. After she had excused herself, Poirot turned to me. What do you think, Hastings? She's hiding something. Everyone on this train is hiding something. The question is whether what she hides is relevant to our investigation. He steepled his fingers. Her age is right. 27 would be the age of Elise Lessner now, but Mrs. Harwood claims to be 41, and she carries the years convincingly. People can lie about their age. They can. But it is harder to lie about one's bones, one's posture, the texture of one's skin. Mrs. Harwood is not 27 pretending to be 41. She is what she appears, a woman in her early 40s. Which means if Elise Lessner is on this train, she is someone else. Mrs. Novak. Mrs. Novak is the right age. She's married to a wealthy man she does not appear to love. Her background, a governess, is the kind of identity that is easy to adopt and difficult to verify. And her demeanor is that of a woman under enormous strain. But she's Czech. Elise Lessner was the daughter of a Swiss-German businessman. Languages can be learned, Hastings. Identities can be constructed. A determined young woman with 10 years and sufficient motivation could become almost anyone. The afternoon wore on. Poirot spoke with the Novaks. Together, then separately. Stefan Novak was courteous but guarded, answering questions with the reflexive politeness of someone trained from birth to say nothing of consequence. His wife, Eva, was more forthcoming, but her frankness felt strategic, as though she were offering small truths to prevent larger ones from being sought. Father Marchand, over a second pot of tea, was open and genial. He had spent 3 months in Istanbul studying illuminated manuscripts. Before that, he had been in Rome. Before that, a parish in Lyon. His travels were academic, his life orderly, his manner transparently sincere. If he was concealing anything, he was doing so with a skill that surpassed even Poirot's ability to detect. There is one passenger I have not yet met, Poirot said that evening as we sat in his compartment. A person who has been conspicuously absent from the dining car, the salon, and the corridors. Who? Compartment number 3. The conductor tells me it is occupied by a Mademoiselle Renard. French, young. She boarded at Istanbul and has not emerged since. Her meals have been taken in her compartment. She has refused the conductor's offer of fresh towels. She has, in short, made herself invisible. Mademoiselle Renard. Renard. That's French for fox. An alias, almost certainly, and a rather pointed one. Before we could investigate further, the train stopped. Not the gradual deceleration of an approaching station, but an abrupt, lurching halt that threw me against the wall and sent Poirot's carefully arranged toiletries crashing to the floor. The lights flickered. Outside, darkness. Absolute darkness, not a lamp or a signal visible in any direction. Then, from somewhere ahead in the train, a sound that froze the blood. A scream. Not the theatrical scream of someone startled, but the raw, ragged scream of someone who had encountered something so horrifying that the body's only response was to empty itself of sound. We were in the corridor in seconds. Other doors were opening, faces appearing, confused, frightened. The conductor, Stavros came running from the far end, his face white. "The sleeping car, monsieur. Compartment number 1. Come quickly." Count Dmitry Varanov was dead. He lay on the floor of his compartment, his body twisted, his face contorted in an expression of agony that would visit me in nightmares for months to come. His hands clutched at his throat. His eyes were open, bulging, sightless. A glass of water lay overturned beside him, its contents soaking into the carpet, and pinned to his chest, with a silver hat pin driven through the fabric of his shirt and into the flesh beneath, was a small card. On it, in elegant copper plate script, 4 words: "The Phantom keeps faith." The next hour was controlled chaos. Poirot took command with a quiet authority that brooked no argument. The corridor was cleared. Passengers were confined to their compartments. Stavros was posted outside the dead man's door, and I was dispatched to find anyone aboard with medical knowledge. Dr. Novak, Stefan's father, it emerged, was a physician, and Stefan himself had completed 2 years of medical school before abandoning it for business. Examined the body with evident reluctance but professional competence. "Poison," he said, straightening. "Almost certainly. The symptoms, the convulsions, the discoloration around the mouth, the contracted pupils, suggest strychnine. Death would have been rapid but extremely painful." "The glass of water," Poirot said. "The most likely vector. A sufficient dose dissolved in water would be nearly undetectable until the first swallow." "He was warned," I said. "We told him to drink nothing. And yet he drank." Poirot's voice carried no reproach, only the flat acknowledgement of a fact. "The question is, how was the poison administered? The glass was in his compartment. The water came from where?" Stavros, when questioned, was emphatic. "I filled the carafe in his compartment myself, from the main water supply, not 2 hours ago. I poured the water. I set the glass on the table. I saw nothing unusual." "And between your visit and the discovery of the body, did anyone enter compartment number 1? "I cannot say for certain, Monsieur Poirot. I was in the staff compartment for part of that time. The corridor was not continuously watched." Poirot examined the compartment with meticulous care. The carafe was seized for analysis. The glass was carefully preserved. The card pinned to Varanov's chest was removed with tweezers and placed in an envelope. "Silver hat pin," Poirot murmured, studying the murder weapon, if a pin could be called that. "A woman's accessory, decorative, old-fashioned, the kind of thing a woman of a certain generation might carry. Or a woman of a younger generation who wishes to evoke a certain image," I suggested. Poirot glanced at me with something approaching approval. "You improve, Hastings." The card itself was plain white stock, the kind available at any stationer's. The copper plate script was flawless, not the hurried scrawl of someone acting in panic, but the deliberate calligraphy of someone who had composed this message in advance, with care, with purpose. "The Phantom keeps faith." "What does it mean?" I asked. "It means, Hastings, that Varanov's killer considers this not murder, but justice. Keeps faith. Faith with a promise. The promise of vengeance made 10 years ago by a 17-year-old girl at her mother's deathbed. Elise Lesner, if our assumptions are correct. But we must be precise. We must establish who could have entered this compartment between the conductor's visit and the time of death." The train, it emerged, had been stopped by a signal failure. A coincidence, according to the engineer, caused by frozen points on the track. Inspector Mikhailov of the Bulgarian police would board at the next station, Sofia, which we were now approaching. In the meantime, Poirot had perhaps 3 hours to investigate. He used every minute. The corridor canvas, the fabric runner that lines the sleeping car floor, yielded one crucial detail. Outside compartment number 1, partially obscured by the shadow of the door frame, was a small stain. Poirot knelt, examined it, touched it with his fingertip. "Glycerine," he said. "The same substance used to write the message on the dining car window. A drop spilled in haste. From the killer's hands. From something the killer was carrying. A small bottle, perhaps. Glycerine is used in many cosmetic preparations. Hand cream, for instance. It would be unremarkable in a woman's luggage. Or a man's, I pointed out. Or a man's, yes, though the hatpin suggests a woman. And the nature of the crime itself, the planning, the patience, the theatrical touches. These speak of someone for whom the act carries emotional weight. This is not the work of a hired killer. This is personal. He knocked on the door of compartment number 3. Mademoiselle Renard, this is Hercule Poirot. I must speak with you. No answer. He knocked again. Mademoiselle, a man has been killed. I am investigating on behalf of the railway company. You must open this door. Silence. Then, very slowly, the lock turned. The woman who faced us was not what I had expected. She was young, mid-20s, with pale hair pinned severely back, a face stripped of color, and eyes that burned with an intensity I found unsettling. She wore a plain dark dress, no jewelry, no cosmetics. She looked like a nun who had mislaid her habit. Mademoiselle Renard, Poirot said. Or should I say, Mademoiselle Lesner? The name hit her like a physical blow. She staggered back a half step, then recovered. I don't know what you're talking about. I think you do. You are Elise Lesner, daughter of Heinrich and Marguerite Lesner of Vienna. You boarded this train with the intention of confronting Count Dmitri Varanov. You wrote the message on the dining car window, and now Varanov is dead. Her face underwent a transformation. Not guilt, not fear, but something more complicated. Shock, genuine, unmistakable shock. Dead? The word came out as a whisper. Varanov is dead. Murdered, poisoned, in his compartment, less than an hour ago. She sat down on her berth as though her legs had given way. Her hands gripped the edge of the mattress. She stared at Poirot with wide, horrified eyes. I didn't kill him, she said. I wrote the message, yes. I wanted him to be afraid. I wanted him to know I had found him, but I did not kill him. I swear on my mother's grave. Then what was your intention? To confront him, to look him in the face and tell him what he did, what his greed cost my family, my mother dead, my father destroyed. He hanged himself in prison 2 years after Maman's death. I was left with nothing but the knowledge of what Varanov had done and the determination to make him answer for it. You followed him across 2 continents. I tracked him. Letters, contacts, bribes. It took years. I lost his trail in Buenos Aires. Then, 3 weeks ago, I received information that he would be on this train. Information from whom? She hesitated. An anonymous source. A telegram to my hotel in Istanbul. You did not find this suspicious? I found it miraculous. I'd been searching for 10 years. I did not question a gift. Poirot regarded her with an expression I knew well. The look of a man sifting truth from falsehood with the precision of a goldsmith weighing dust. Mademoiselle, you say you did not kill Varanov. I'm inclined, for the moment, to believe you. Your shock at learning of his death appeared genuine. But someone on this train did kill him, and that someone may have used your presence, your vendetta, your letters, your theatrical message on the window, as a screen behind which to commit murder for entirely different reasons. You mean I was used? I mean that you, Mademoiselle Lesner, may be not the hunter but the hunted, not the killer but the perfect suspect. The color drained from her already pale face. Someone set me up. Someone knew you were searching for Varanov. Someone sent you a telegram revealing his presence on this train, and someone, I suspect, knew exactly what you would do. The message, the fear, the confrontation, and planned the murder to coincide perfectly, so that every piece of evidence would point to you. The hatpin, I said, it's a woman's weapon. Your weapon, they would say. Elise's hand went involuntarily to her hair. and I saw with a sinking feeling that her hair was secured with silver pins identical in style to the one driven into Varanov's chest. "Mon Dieu," she whispered. Inspector Mikhailov boarded at Sofia, a large mustached man who smelled of tobacco and looked at Poirot with the weary suspicion of a provincial policeman confronted with a celebrity. He listened to Poirot's account, examined the body, questioned Elise Lessner with the subtlety of a hammer hitting an anvil, and pronounced himself satisfied that the case was straightforward. The Lessner woman. Motive means opportunity. The hatpin alone is enough. "The hatpin proves nothing," Poirot said patiently. "It proves that the killer used a woman's accessory. It does not prove which woman. She confessed to writing the threatening message. A message on a window is not a murder. Inspector, I urge you, do not close this case prematurely." Mikhailov grunted, unpersuaded, but agreed to allow Poirot to continue his investigation while the train proceeded to Belgrade, where formal charges could be laid. The hours that followed were the most intense I had witnessed Poirot work. He moved through the train like a surgeon through an operating theater, precise, deliberate, wasting no motion. He examined luggage. He questioned every passenger and every member of the crew. He measured distances, timed walks from one compartment to another, tested locks, opened windows, and at one point spent 10 minutes on his hands and knees examining the carpet in the corridor with a magnifying glass. And gradually, the shape of the case began to change. The first revelation came from the water carafe. Poirot had asked the dining car attendant to provide him with a sample of water from the main supply. He compared it, by smell, by taste, by clarity, with the residue in Varanov's carafe. "Different," he announced. "The water in Varanov's carafe has a faintly alkaline quality. The main supply does not. Someone emptied the original carafe and refilled it with water that had been pre-treated with the poison. But Stavros said he filled the carafe himself. He did. And someone, after his visit, emptied it and replaced it with a poison supply. This requires access to a second container of water. A bottle, a flask, already prepared with strychnine. Someone carrying a bottle of poisoned water onto the train. Précisément. Which means the murder was planned before we ever boarded. The killer knew Varanov would be aboard. The killer knew his compartment number. The killer came prepared. The second revelation was more subtle. Poirot spent an hour with the passenger manifest, comparing it with the tickets and identification documents collected by Stavros. Everything matched, except for one detail. "Mrs. Irene Harwood," Poirot said, holding her ticket up to the light. Her ticket was booked 3 weeks ago, the same day, according to Mademoiselle Lessner, that the anonymous telegram was sent revealing Varanov's travel plans. "You think Harwood sent the telegram?" "I think someone booked a ticket knowing what would happen on this train. 3 weeks of preparation. 3 weeks to plan a murder and construct a scapegoat. But Mrs. Harwood is 41. She's English. She has nothing to do with the Lessner family. Nothing that we know of. But consider, Hastings. What do we actually know about Mrs. Harwood? We know what she has told us. We know her ticket. We know her luggage, which I have examined and which contains nothing incriminating. But we do not know her." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "There is something else. Something I noticed during my examination of the corridor." "The glycerine stain?" "Not the glycerine. Something else entirely." He reached into his pocket and produced a small object, holding it up between thumb and forefinger. It was a button. Small, dark, unremarkable. The kind of button found on a man's waistcoat. This was on the floor of the corridor, outside compartment number 1. Not near the door, but near the window, the narrow space between the window frame and the wall, where a person might stand if they wished to remain unseen while someone else passed. Someone was hiding in the corridor. Someone was watching, waiting, and in the act of pressing against the wall, they lost a button. He turned the button over. On the reverse, tiny but legible, were the letters AFM. "Father Marchand," I said. Father Bernard Marchand, the genial Dominican, the scholar of manuscripts, the man who greeted me by name on a train he should not have expected me to be on. The world tilted. Poirot found Father Marchand in the salon car, reading his breviary with the same mild contentment I had observed before. He looked up as we approached, and his round pink face creased in a welcoming smile. "Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings, how goes the investigation?" "It goes well, Father. So well, in fact, that I have come to ask you about this." Poirot placed the button on the table. Father Marchand looked at it. His smile did not waver, but something behind his eyes shifted. A door closing, a curtain drawn. "A button," he said. "Your button, from your waistcoat. Lost, I believe, in the corridor outside compartment number 1, at approximately the time Count Varanov was murdered." The silence that followed was unlike any silence I had experienced. "Are very thorough, Monsieur Poirot." "Are very thorough, Monsieur Poirot," Father Marchand said at last. "I endeavor to be. Now, Father, or should I address you by another name? I suggest you tell me the truth. All of it. Because the alternative is that an innocent young woman goes to prison for a crime she did not commit, and I do not intend to allow that." Father Marchand closed his breviary. He removed his spectacles and polished them on his sleeve. A gesture, I realized, not of vanity, but of delay, as though he were gathering himself for what came next. "My name," he said, "is Bernard Lesner. I am Elise's uncle, Marguerite's brother." The room seemed to contract around us. I entered the Dominican order 20 years ago, before any of this happened. When Marguerite died, I was in a monastery in Provence. I learned of it months later, and what I learned, what the family told me, was not the version that appeared in the newspapers. What did the family tell you? That Heinrich pushed her, that it was not an accident but murder, that the argument over the letters was merely the final spark. Heinrich had been violent for years, and Marguerite had been trying to leave him. The icon, the letters, the exposure of his wartime dealings, these gave her leverage, and leverage was the one thing Heinrich could not tolerate. And Varanov knew. He had sold the icon deliberately, knowing about the hidden letters, knowing they would expose Heinrich. It was blackmail. Not for money, but for power. Varanov wanted Heinrich under his thumb, and he didn't care that Marguerite might be caught in the crossfire. So both men were responsible for your sister's death. In different ways. Heinrich directly. Varanov through callous manipulation. Heinrich is dead. He died in prison. But Varanov escaped, changed his name, disappeared. And you decided to find him. I decided that justice must be served. Not vengeance, justice. There is a difference, Monsieur Poirot, though the world does not always recognize it. And the means of this justice? Strychnine in a water carafe. Father Marchand met Poirot's gaze directly. I am a priest. I have wrestled with this for 10 years. I have prayed. I have sought guidance. And in the end, I chose to act, knowing that I was committing a mortal sin and accepting the consequences. You used your niece. Something like pain crossed his face. I did not intend. Elise was never supposed to be here. I sent the telegram, yes, to draw Varanov out of hiding. I knew that if Varanov learned that someone was searching for him, he would run, as he always ran. But if he received a specific threat, the message on the window, he would be distracted, frightened, focused on the wrong enemy. It would give me the cover I needed. But you sent the telegram to Elise? I sent it anonymously. I thought, I hoped, she would use the information to confront Varanov publicly, to expose him. Not this. Not what? Not to become my alibi, my shield, the obvious suspect behind whom I could hide. His voice broke. I love Elise. She's the last of my family, and I have put her in mortal danger of the gallows. The confession hung in the air, raw, unvarnished, devastating. A priest who had committed murder and, in doing so, had framed the niece he loved. Poirot said nothing for a long moment. Then, "You will make a full statement to Inspector Mikhailov." "I will. And you understand what this means?" "I understand perfectly, Monsieur Poirot. I have committed a sin from which there is no absolution by human law. I accept whatever comes." He rose, straightened his clerical collar, and walked to the door. There he paused. "Tell Elise. Tell her I am sorry. Tell her I thought I was protecting her. Tell her I was wrong." He walked out into the corridor, his small, round figure moving with the steady gait of a man walking not toward punishment, but toward something he had been moving toward his entire life. Inspector Mikhailov, confronted with a full confession and the physical evidence of the button, the glycerine, and the pre-prepared water, abandoned his case against Elise Lesner with the reluctant grace of a man admitting he has been wrong. Father Marchand, Bernard Lesner, was taken into custody at Belgrade. He went quietly, carrying only his breviary and the spectacles he had polished so carefully. The platform was cold, the sky leaden, the city gray and unwelcoming. Not the setting one would choose for the end of a story, but stories seldom consult our preferences. Elise Lesner watched from the window of the train as her uncle was led away. Her face was a landscape of warring emotions. Grief, rage, bewilderment, love. She pressed her hand against the glass, and he, as though sensing it, turned and looked back. Something passed between them. Not forgiveness, not understanding, but the raw, indestructible bond of blood. Then the train pulled away, and Belgrade slid into the distance, taking Bernard Lesner with it. The remaining journey to Paris was subdued. Passengers spoke in murmurs, meals were eaten quickly and without conversation. The glamour of the Orient Express had been tarnished, and everyone aboard felt it. Mrs. Harwood departed at Trieste, as she had said she would. At the station, she sought out Poirot. "You suspected me," she said, not accusatory, matter of fact. "I suspected everyone, madame. It is the method. I am who I said I am. A widow, a traveler, a woman who happened to be on a train where a murder was committed. Nothing more." Poirot studied her. "And the way you watched Count Varanoff in the dining car? The way your eyes went to him the moment the lights returned?" She was quiet for a moment. "Then, I recognized him from Vienna years ago. I was a friend of Marguerite Lesner's. I knew what he had done. When I saw him on the platform in Istanbul, I felt, I don't know, dread perhaps. The sense that the past was catching up. It was. Yes, it was." She offered her hand. "Goodbye, Monsieur Poirot. I hope your remaining journey is uneventful." "After this week, madame, uneventful would be a luxury." The Novaks departed at Venice. Stefan Novak shook Poirot's hand with excessive formality. His wife, Eva, paused as she passed us on the platform. "I never liked trains," she said. "Now I know why." She walked away, and I found myself wondering whether her sadness had ever had anything to do with Varanov or Lesner at all, or whether it was simply the sadness of a woman who had married the wrong man and was beginning to understand the length of her sentence. We arrived in Paris at the Gare de Lyon on a Tuesday morning, 4 days after we had departed Istanbul and a lifetime removed from the world we had inhabited before. On the platform, as porters swarmed and passengers dispersed into the grey November bustle of the city, Poirot stood very still, his hands on the handle of his suitcase, his moustache perfectly composed, his eyes distant. A strange case, Hastings. Deeply strange. A priest who committed murder, a victim who arguably deserved his fate, a young woman nearly destroyed by the actions of the man who loved her most. And a phantom. The phantom. Yes, there never was one, was there? No ghost, no supernatural haunting, only a man's guilt and a family's grief, wearing the mask of something otherworldly. That is the nature of phantoms, mon ami. They are never what they seem. The phantom on the Orient Express was not a spectre, but a memory. The memory of Marguerite Lesner falling and the reverberations of that fall echoing through a decade until they shook the walls of a sleeping car and brought a man to his death. He picked up his suitcase. "Come, Hastings. Paris awaits, and Paris, she does not care for phantoms. She cares for coffee, for croissants, for the morning papers read in a cafe where the chairs are comfortable and the world is, for a moment, orderly." I followed him through the station, past the bookstores and the flower sellers and the hurrying crowds. Behind us, the Orient Express sat at its platform, silent now, its windows dark, its secrets carried away by the passengers who had shared them. But the ghosts lingered. I felt them as we stepped into the November air. Not the ghosts of the dead, but of the living. Elise Lesner, somewhere in the city, carrying a grief compounded by betrayal. Bernard Lesner, in a cell in Belgrade, praying to a god he had defied. Mrs. Harwood in Trieste, remembering a friend who fell from a balcony. The Novaks in Venice, navigating a marriage built on unstable ground. And Varanov himself, that haunted, hunted man who had spent 10 years running from the consequences of his own greed and had finally been caught, not by the phantom he feared, but by a gentle priest with spectacles and a breviary and a vial of poison in his pocket. Justice. Vengeance. The two words circled each other in my mind, refusing to resolve. "Poirot," I said as we settled into a taxi, "do you think Father Marchand was right? That what he did was justice?" Poirot was quiet for a long time. The taxi moved through the Paris streets, past the shuttered shops and the plane trees bare against the sky. "He believed it was," Poirot said at last. "And that is the tragedy. A good man, a man of faith, of discipline, of compassion, convinced himself that murder could be moral, that the arithmetic of grief could produce a sum that justified taking a life. And you disagree." "I disagree absolutely. Murder is never justified, Hastings, not by grief, not by love, not by the most eloquent theology. The little gray cells, they insist upon this with a clarity that admits no exception. But Varanov was guilty. He destroyed the Lesner family. And for that he should have faced a court of law. Instead, he was poisoned by a priest who then allowed his own niece to be suspected of the crime. Where is the justice in that?" I had no answer. "The phantom on the Orient Express," Poirot murmured, almost to himself. "It was not Varanov's ghost. It was the ghost of the idea that we can correct the wrongs of the past by committing new wrongs in the present. It is the most dangerous phantom of all, Hastings, because it wears the face of righteousness." The taxi delivered us to our hotel. Poirot paid the driver with his customary precision, adding a tip calibrated to the exact centime. "And now," he said, straightening his coat, "we shall have coffee, proper coffee. Not the Turkish abomination, nor the English dishwater, but French coffee, served in a cup that is the correct size, at a temperature that respects the bean." I laughed. After everything, the death, the deception, the moral vertigo of the past 4 days, Poirot's insistence on the proper temperature of coffee felt like an anchor to sanity. We sat in the hotel cafe, and the coffee came, and it was, I must say, excellent. Poirot drank his with closed eyes, as though each sip were a small prayer of thanksgiving. "Hastings," he said. "Yes? You will write this case?" "I will." "Then write it honestly. Do not spare the priest because he was kind. Do not spare Varanov because he was killed. Do not spare Hercule Poirot because he did not prevent the murder. You couldn't have prevented it. Perhaps not. But the little gray cells, they reproach me still. They saw the clues, the button, the glycerin, the ticket booked 3 weeks in advance. They should have assembled the picture sooner. No one could have. Hercule Poirot could have, and he did not. That is a fact I must live with." He set down his cup. "But the truth has been told. The innocent have been freed. The guilty will face the law of man, and I suspect a more demanding tribunal besides, and the Orient Express will continue to run, carrying its passengers and its secrets as it always has. He dabbed his mustache with a napkin. And now, if you will excuse me, I shall retire. The journey has been long. The little grey cells, they demand rest, and my mustache, Hastings, it has suffered terribly from the Balkan air. I watched him go. That small, fastidious figure, so precise, so certain, so endlessly capable of surprising me. Then I ordered another coffee, opened my notebook, and began to write. Outside, Paris went about its business. The November wind scattered leaves along the boulevard, and somewhere, on a railway siding, the Orient Express waited for its next journey, its carriages empty, its corridors silent, its secrets locked in the paneled walls and blue carpet and brass fittings that had witnessed so much and would never tell. Phantoms, after all, know how to keep their silence.